Hi, I'm Steve Barlow. This is the Humanised Workforce Future You podcast video, where we're talking about perceptions of the future, issues that we need to be aware of, and their role in a rapidly changing work and life environment.
Hi, I'm Craig Saffin. The Humanised Workforce Future You podcast series is focused on the key factors evolving to create a more humanised workforce and how people from all walks of life are creating their future selves. Hi, welcome to the Humanised Workforce Future You. And today I'm with my usual colleague, Steve Barlow. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Craig.
Over the last few episodes, if you've been following them, we've been focusing on the requirements for a CEO in the emerging humanised workforce and the requirements for a humanised workforce and how that CEO needs to shape the future you, or how the CEO needs to shape themselves. So today we'd like to try and draw that together and bring it together and summarise it. And the three main areas we want to talk about today are, from a CEO's perspective, how they are and how they relate and how they grow. So let's have a discussion about that. I think that we've gathered some great information from the recent guests, and I think this is, I'm eager to get some perspectives on the table to summarise it. So Steve, how do you see the humanised workforce CEO? How are they as a person?
Well, of course, we're trying to summarise or tie together some of the ideas that we've talked about over these last 4 or 5 sessions, aren't we? So some of the themes that have come up around courage.
Yep.
There's been a bit of talk around courage. And then there's also been talk around trust and being trustworthy. And then there's also been talk around values and purpose. I think a lot of the stuff that I encounter on YouTube or on LinkedIn, a lot of it focuses on the qualities that make up a good CEO.
Yep.
You know, like being authentic or being courageous or being trusting or whatever. And obviously, these personal qualities are super important. But, you know, they're not the only thing that's important, but they're a base. And if you don't start from being this kind of a person, then anything you build on top of it's not going to kind of fit together.
Mm.
And I guess that's the authentic piece about it, that we have to, I mean, we've got to walk the walk before we start talking the talk, you know, otherwise people are going to see through us.
Mm. Yeah, that authentic piece has come through a lot, hasn't it? It's very, I mean, if you're going to be a leader, and CEOs being a leader, you're either top down and dogmatic, and you know, the old autocratic piece, or you're actually this collaborative leader that people see as reflecting the values of the organization they want to work for, isn't it?
And I mean, I think that autocratic piece is historically very present. You know, that's what things used to be like. And I mean, going back for centuries, you know, business was sort of built on the model of the military, with highly kind of structured, high structures and strong structures, and the power being built in as you know. And in the past, of course, it was to do more with how much money you paid or what kind of social class you belong to.
That's right.
You know, and these days, I mean, we don't want that anymore, really. It's more about who you are and what you bring to the table as a human being.
Yes.
And, you know, where you stand and what you stand on and what you stand for.
Yes.
That is becoming increasingly important.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point, isn't it? Like in the age of spin, there's this requirement to be believable and trustworthy. It's I think some people have really stretched the limits, haven't they, in recent times? And in the end, if you hire intelligent people around you, you don't get away with it actually. So you can stretch the limits of what is believable and trustworthy in your concept or what you're trying to get across. But at the end of the day, the people that are working for you or that you're trying to lead, they're the final arbiters, aren't they, on this?
Yeah. And you can't hide much these days.
That's right.
You can't really get away with much. So,
yeah.
I think that that who you are is going to be increasingly important as we move forward, and who you are will be increasingly visible.
Yeah.
People.
Yeah.
And people will talk.
That's right. And when we were talking to Dieter recently, in that interview, he was talking about the vulnerability, right? And how important that vulnerability is. And to be honest, vulnerability is not something I always thought about when I was a CEO. But I can see that, being willing to share something and to open up a bit to be that human rather than the CEO, human first. This was a big thing that was discussed by Dieter, wasn't it? The requirement.
Yeah, but it's a learning thing because as I said, the model it has been the kind of invincible leader, the kind of superhero who can do all sorts of wonderful tricks, But this idea of being vulnerable. It's part of the authenticity piece, and it's also part of recognizing that you could be a superhero at work but absolutely hopeless at home.
Yes.
Or whatever, and that you're more likely to be seen for what you are these days. But the challenge is, how do you manage the being vulnerable with also being believable or being authoritative or having, using power?
I think it's a good question. I think the answer for me is consistency. So you can't just put on a mask and pretend that you're that. You either are or you aren't. And so if you come in on a Monday and you're all of a sudden on authentic, and then by Friday, because you've had a tough week, you're not authentic, then I think people quickly see through that sort of thing. It's interesting. I've been in discussions recently. There's a lot of corporate CEOs out there in Australia, and I expect globally, that are still not this type of leader. And I think that there's been the big exit lately that's been well documented and things like that. But this is, as Dieter said to us recently in the interview, that's why people are leaving, right? They're leaving because of that. They have the choice. When the people have the choice, they don't want to work for a fake, do they?
No.
Someone who's egocentric or overly self-assured. You want someone who's a bit, lacks a bit of hubris and can actually be, like you said, vulnerable. Right?
Well, that's the more humanized aspect of it, isn't it? Just like a machine, a little dictator.
What about how these CEOs relate to their employees? What's the style there for these in the humanized environment?
Well, thinking about the Dieter interview we had, he talked about sort of bringing out the best in people and creating opportunities.
Yep.
And that sort of resonated with me.
Andrew Manderfield touched on that too, didn't he? That sort of thing.
Yeah. Actually, I think it's come up a few times about that. Leaders can create opportunities because they have power.
Yeah.
So they can open doors for people. And that also comes into the caring about the people. Do you actually want to open doors for people? And how does it fit into the purpose of the whole process? There's lots of different ways that you can create an outcome. There's not just one pathway, and sort of thinking about, well, what are the opportunities here, and what's going to benefit the most people, and what's going to allow the people to shine in this situation. And I guess it's that sort of spirit of sharing the glory as well. Seeing other people shine means that you don't have to be as a leader, you don't have to be the focus doesn't have to be on you all the time. You don't have to be in the spotlight.
Right.
You know, the leader is someone who brings out the best and puts other people in the spotlight, makes them the hero of their story.
Yeah, I mean, it always comes back. We raise this a lot actually about being the facilitator of the process and the problem solving rather than having to be the CEO has all the answers. You don't have to have all the answers, but you do have to have the trust of the team and be able to extract the best from the great people you have around you, don't you?
Mm. And I mean that helps people find their own purpose. Like, I don't think people want to work in a situation where they don't feel valued and they don't feel like they've got a real purpose to play. They're just a cog in the system.
Just a cog, yeah. They don't really count, right? So
yeah, they're just part of a machine. People want to feel like they belong, like they can contribute, like they're worthwhile. And if they don't feel like that, they're not likely to stay. Or if they do stay, they might not be the kind of people you really that are going to be best for you.
They're not as productive, right? And the things we've found in these interviews we've done and the discussions we've had about CEOs is it's easy to talk about this sort of stuff, but actually it's quite hard for leaders to adopt this style, isn't it? And to do it well, to have the confidence.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you, because you run a lot of training programs and you've had a lot of experience in this area, but I wonder about the empathy. One of the interesting phenomenons that's risen in the last few years is this training people on empathy or EQ. Do you think that sort of thing's possible?
Thanks for watching this video on Humanised Workforce Future You. Please leave a rating or review for the series on the medium where you source your videos.
The transcripts for today's video can be found on craigsafin.com. Please subscribe to the series to avoid missing out on future episodes.